All right, everybody, welcome to podcast number whatever. It's Erik and I are back. And sorry, Canada, we're going to pick on you again. But with your government, you kind of deserve it. So, Erik, I'm going to let you kind of run through the table of contents for today's speech and podcast, and let's go through some of the things and see why we think that once again, Canada's kind of making some crazy moves in the government, and why we should, if you're Canadian, be thinking about somewhere else.
Yeah, it was a bit scary. You showed me this chart, and it kind of scared the pants off me. I didn't think this would happen. So what we're looking at right now is the Polymarket, basically estimate of who's going to win the next election. And I think we're both a little bit surprised, but maybe you could tell us about why we look at Polymarket. And then
well, you put me on to Polymarket a year or two ago, I guess, and I didn't realize it existed. And what's very cool about it is people are like not emotional about it. They're betting with their dollars, right? And so it's kind of like who people are thinking are going to win. You can bet in anything from a horse race in Poland to whatever you want. Right? It's anything, but politics are on there a lot, and they were deadly accurate with a lot of the last elections, like the Trump election, and everybody was thinking that's ridiculous. But it seems like when people bet with their money and they're not caring about the result other than the reality of who wins or loses, it gets very accurate. And so, well, I think if you're looking at the chart there in January or something like that, it was just going to be a wipeout in election. Like the Liberals in Canada are just going to barely get any votes. Pierre Poilievre was very popular, riding high. And I guess what kind of happened was, when Trump got elected and then started talking about Canada as the 51st state, and Trump does a lot of posturing in his talks. So, we're down here in Panama. He talked about taking over the Panama Canal and all that sort of stuff. Is just kind of a bit ridiculous, but it's a good way to negotiate. It's the art of the deal, right? So, somehow the Liberals, which is a bit ridiculous after the last 8 years of being in power and driving the country and economy into the ground, have come out as the saviors of Canada in this thing. And, they're the ones that are going to fight Trump on, tariffs and all that stuff. So what are your thoughts on that stuff?
Well, 6 months ago, I would have bet $10,000 on Poilievre winning, right? I never saw this happening, and I can't believe Trump. Usually we kind of support him in general. I can't believe he's actually helping the Liberals continue to destroy Canada. We're going to go through a few more talking points, but man, I didn't see this coming. And then, I'm pretty used to the Liberals. There's a couple articles out there about them kind of, fooling around with the polls and making it look like they're better than they are. But I mean, to see this, like 69% versus 32%, that is shocking. And then Pierre, it seems like he kind of
got quiet all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, I thought he was cooperating at first, like trying to work with the Republicans. And then maybe he saw that it was working for the Liberals, and like lately he's been kind of attacking Trump as well. And it's like, you're doing the same thing as the Liberals. You want to differentiate yourself from them, I would think. But anyways,
it's kind of, I kind of find it funny, to be honest, that, I find it hard to watch, to think people think in Canada that the Liberals are going to save the country, but that they're making, they're projecting the enemy to be Trump. Trump doesn't owe Canada anything. Trump's the president of the U.S., not of Canada. And he's looking out for his own country. He's doing what he does. I mean, I think Trump can be a bit of a buffoon most of the time, like on social media and things like that. But his policies are generally pretty good. And, and I kind of agree with them. I think the Doge thing with getting Elon and those guys in to cut a lot of the waste, another thing that I find amazing that people actually protest that. And, it's kind of fun watching, sorry, I'm going to use a word I probably shouldn't, but watching libtards key their own cars as they go around and destroy Teslas, because Teslas and Elon were the darling of the Democratic Party just a couple of years ago. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's shocking. Like, honestly, for our business, I hate to say it, but it's good, right? I mean, we have Germany, UK is also going ridiculously authoritarian, and using hate speech as the moniker for putting people in jail and stuff like that.
Yeah, we got to do them. We got to do an article on UK next.
Yeah.
It is very bad.
So Canada's not alone in this battle to the bottom, but it's a bit crazy that they're taking the stance they are. And I guess, like I've said to a lot of people in my life, I'm not really disappointed in the government. The governments are always ridiculous. They'll always be more authoritarian and power hungry if you allow them. What I'm disappointed is that supposedly 69% of the population is sheep and are willing to be fooled by this.
Yeah.
And I know from talking to a lot of our friends and folks moving into our communities, like Veritas Village in Coronado here in Panama, they feel the same way. It's like, what is going on? Like, why are people being snowed by this? No pun intended in Canada, but it's pretty amazing to see. And obviously Carney has really called a snap election here to take advantage of this. But Polymarket might be off by 1 or 2%, but it's not off by 60.
Yeah.
So that the spread is ridiculous, right?
Yeah. It looks like we need to at least talk about the possibility of Liberals being in power for another 5 years. And I know a couple months ago we were joking about how. I'm not joking, but the Conservatives were going to get into power and, try and fix it and, have to do all the hard things that an adult has to do to fix the country.
Like raising kids.
And then the Liberals would come in again and just say like, oh, he raised, he did all these hard things. We're going to do it easy. And so you and I were talking about like the Liberals would probably finish off the job of destroying Canada, but 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah.
But now it looks like they're going to get into power again. We should talk about.
Yeah, I mean, what we were talking about was basically, look, if Poilievre wins by some miracle at this point, I guess this graph can go all over the place, but he's got to do the hard stuff. Like Canada's housing market is so inflated that many people in Canada are what I would call false millionaires. Right? Their home is worth $2 million and it should be worth $400,000. So all their assets. Is that a segue into our next part?
Well, it is. We're gonna skip ahead to that. This is Canada's home prices wages. Let's take a look at this one.
Yeah, I've seen this moving chart there before, and we'll play it on the screen for you as well here. But because my kids used to say, when you were looking at you were our age in the '80s or whatever, early '90s, then you were looking at a salary that was much more in line with the cost of homes. And so, we have to have 3 jobs in order to do that and all this. And I was kind of like, pull up your socks and work, right? That was kind of my initial attitude. But then when I started actually diving into the stats, I realized they're right. I was wrong. The spread is incredible.
Yeah.
And, going back to what Poilievre has to kind of do if he managed to get into power, what we were predicting a month ago is that he would have to unleash an enormous amount of inventory for developers like us to go and build homes and, do all that sort of that. Obviously put a bit of a, curtail the massive immigration into the country, which is, flooding the housing.
That's what's driving this, isn't it?
Yeah, that and it's almost impossible in Canada. I mean, we don't have any Veritas villages in Canada, and I can't certainly see them coming in the foreseeable future because of, the red tape. In Vancouver, it's 60% of the cost of a home is in permitting and red tape.
Yeah, that was shocking.
I mean, that 40% is actually what's going into the house. Yeah. But so what if Poilievre got in and he managed to bring down the level of immigration and increase inventory by just saying we're getting rid of the red tape and you're going to be able to build homes and all this sort of thing, and what's that going to do? It's going to flood the market with inventory. And what does supply and demand do? It's going to make the cost of housing come down. And people aren't going to like that if that's what happens. And, the result of that is he wouldn't get more than his 4-year term, likely. And then, like you said, and we've talked about, well, then I guess it's up to the Liberals to destroy Canada in 4 years from now. But with, the previous 8 years and then a potential another 4, 12 years in a row makes it pretty amazing. So go ahead and talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually been a decade, right? 2015 to 2025. Right. So they've been in power for a decade. We got a chart here about Canada's real GDP per capita, right? Because they always come out and they say, GDP growth is 2% or whatever. Like, we're in line with the G7.
In line with Rwanda, maybe.
Yeah, what people forget is it should be per capita. Because if you bring in 10 million people, yeah, your GDP is going to go up. But Canada is brutal because they are a massive contributor. Like the government is a massive contributor to GDP, which is not an effective use of tax income.
It's like, hi, we hired more CRA employees, so now look at our great GDP.
Yeah. The economic activity has increased. But I mean, this is the OECD, 1 decade, Canada is the bottom. 1.4% growth in per capita GDP.
And what's 18 or 20, something like that for the U.S.? Like
Ireland is like 41%.
Wow.
Yeah, United States is 18. I mean, these countries are doing what they're supposed to do. And Canada it's a disaster, right? So we've established that the Liberals are really bad for Canada.
Well, and that's the thing, that people don't look at these stats, right? That everybody is emotional in politics, right? It's you're either a right wing, you're left wing, or you're kind of libertarian like us, which is kind of down the middle. Like to see good policies more than anything in terms of left and right.
Yeah.
But when we can sit here and criticize the liberal government, the Democrat governments, the what I would call kind of fake Democrats, right? And they're very much more authoritarian with cutting down on free speech and censorship and all that sort of stuff. But it's these kind of stats that show like we're not making this up, right? This is the reality.
Yeah. I found this clip because we're talking about Canada being a little bit broken, and it's hard for me to kind of summarize it, but I think this guy kind of nailed it. If we're going to let him play a little bit, just bear with me.
Canada is objectively broken. In 2013, this once great country was ranked 5th in the world for quality of living. However, fast forward a single decade and we've plummeted to number 33 on the list. Unfortunately, it seems like the country's decline has only just begun. For instance, the OECD predicts that Canada will be the worst performing advanced economy in the world for the next 4 decades straight. The average citizen pays roughly 50% in taxes. Yeah. Our healthcare system just ranked 10th out of 10. We're sitting on one of the largest housing bubbles in history, with prices projected to rise another 20% over the next 2 years, and food banks can hardly keep up with the increasing number of people who can't afford to feed themselves. I do not advocate for hopelessness. However, if we have any shot at fixing the problems this country is facing, it first requires us taking an accurate view of just how bad things are. Destruction is always quicker than growth, and if Canada's current government is able to continue operating like a wrecking ball for another year and a half, we'll be adding decades to our recovery.
It's not another year and a half. It's another 4 years, right?
Yeah, potentially.
That's scary.
Well, and the other thing that brought up, is I find interesting, is even people in my family are so supportive of the Canadian medical system. It's a raging disaster. I mean, I've talked about the experiences. I've had kidney stones in Nicaragua, and I've had kidney stones in Canada. And tell you, if I was in Canada, I'd be flying to Nicaragua or here in Panama, even in pain, to have them dealt with again, because it was a horrible experience in Canada. And a friend of mine that had an accident was in the waiting room for 4 or 5 hours, even though it was serious damage. And it's just a broken system. Yet everybody thinks it's free. First of all, nothing is free.
No.
And when you have a government-run medical system, it's so inefficient because they have no competition. It's just human nature. It's the nature of the beast. But it's so bad and so expensive that we talk a little bit about taxes, right? I left Canada back years ago, not because I felt like it was an authoritarian government that was going to have exit taxes and stuff on me if I didn't get out. It was just the taxes that were there that were so bad. And obviously I prefer the climate down here in Central America, Northern South America. But I mean, there's a litany of taxes that hit you. And I think they were saying, an average person in Canada pays 50 to 55% or something in taxes. Well, I would guess I wasn't average, because when I started calculating mine, it was more than that. It was closer to 65 or 70.
No sympathy from the communists.
No, exactly. But it's crazy. And then, well, here, we can list some of the taxes.
Yeah, right? We got, we have, sometimes it's nice to have it all succinct in one spot. So Canada is Canada a land of taxes? I would kind of say so. We got a business tax, income tax, CPP, unemployment tax, GST, PST, HST, and I'm going to run through an example bill coming up here. Property tax, provincial income tax, excise tax, capital gains tax. We talked about that a couple months ago.
Inclusion rate a while ago.
Yeah. Land transfer tax, luxury tax, media tax, regulation tax, air travel, carbon tax. I mean, that's going to go nuts with this guy, right?
Oh, yeah. Carbon Carney.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're just addicted they're addicted to taxes. And I mean, what do we have here in terms of real estate? We have a little property transfer tax when a property exchanges hands. Like that's
and I mean, down here you can start an international company that works in other parts of the world, and you pay a whopping 0% tax. Like you are contributing. We're sitting here in Panama City right now. We are contributing every day. Like you go to a restaurant, you buy groceries, you do all sorts of things. You're contributing to the economy. A smart country understands that, right? Let them bring their businesses here and have either zero or very low taxes, because they're going to drive a lot of employees to come here. A lot of business is going to happen. And, the things that are taxed, you have to pay taxes on buying a TV or whatever. Like there's a VAT.
What is it in Panama, just for our listeners?
I can't even remember.
It's 7%.
I think so too. That's how unimportant it is to me.
Yeah.
Don't even know. But the reality is, the more people you get to come and bring jobs and boost the economy, the better. Meanwhile, countries like Canada, are scaring people out, and then talking about an exit tax, which California has talked about. I think Norway did, right?
Yeah,
your heritage, right?
Yeah, I was kind of teasing my what's left of my family in Canada, and I was showing them I'm pretty proud of Norway. But
sorry, I'm jumping all around your topics.
No, but they're doing a lot of things wrong, and I think I'd sent this to you guys, about a week or so ago. I was a little bit surprised. I wasn't even aware that Norway had done this, but they do have a very negative view of rich people. Yeah. There was a minister there that had she was like the minister of the economy or something like that. And she had the equivalent of the CBC had done a little piece on her. And she had on her wall something like 20 of the richest Norwegians in Canada with targets on their faces or something like that. Like the attitude of being against the wealthy is just shocking. Anyways.
It's a little pre-World War II Germany, to be honest.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of
that kind
parallels.
Of sentiment, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really get it. Like most people that contribute to society are worked hard. If they you can take a guy like the best or worst case scenario, depending on how you look at it, like Elon Musk, right?
Yeah,
he wasn't born with a big pot of money. I mean,
he's on record as being the highest individual taxpayer who's ever existed in the history of humans.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they should be thanking him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and for all the innovation and the things that he's done, the employment that he's created, but no, we're going to crap on him because he's uncovering problems in the government.
I hate to say it, but he's like, if anyone's read the book Atlas Shrugged, he just seems like John Galt to me. It's fascinating. Anyway, so Norway,
we'll have to get together with him and make Galt's Gulch for
that'd be cool.
But yeah, so go ahead.
I'll just run through that example. So Norway thought they were going to be brainiacs and put this wealth tax in effect, and they did their calculations, and it was going to bring in just 146 million annually, right? Not bad. Instead, the rich figured it out. And individuals worth 54 billion left the country, and now they're losing $600 million a year in revenue. Like this, many countries have tried this.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
Always fails.
I was going to say it's kind of like socialism or communism. Multiple hundreds of millions of people have died because of it, and it always fails. And people somehow think, well, that's because they didn't do it right. We're going to do it better. It's the same with this exit tax or wealth taxes. It's like, well, I mean, Canada, a buddy of mine who had a company and sold it and did really well, planned his leaving of Canada better than I did and left more tax advantageously. But he left. He is a very bright guy that would have started more companies. In fact, he started them in the US and then in other parts of the Caribbean and things like that because of tax laws. But he would have created more big companies, more employment, but he's just one example. But he's gone, right? And he's never going to. He dropped his residency like I have in Canada. He's never going to pay another Canadian cent to taxes.
Yeah.
So it's just unbelievable that you're supposed to have these fairly smart people in financial roles in the government, and they make a call like that, which without knowing every other example of it has failed.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it is shocking, and it's scary what the Liberals have done, and I guess what they're going to do. Maybe we should wrap it up in the interest of time. But what do you think are some potential solutions for Canadians?
Well, I mean, if I was still there now, I would say your curtain is closing on the time. Like I thought, much like, I've talked to some really smart people in the U.S. and I'm glad to see the way they're thinking. Right, they're seeing the Trump era, one more term. Always talking about a third term now. Don't think that's going to happen.
What? That's not going to fly very well.
No, it's not been very popular in the last week. No. But they realize that it's a bit of a reprieve, right? They can get their ducks in a row, plan their plan B. We talk about plan Bs all the time, right? Another residency in another country, work towards citizenship here in Panama, for example. You get residency quite easy through 2 or 3 different methods. Like you can invest in buying a home here, and then in 5 years you can get a Panamanian passport, right? So. Mm-hmm. So it's one of the ones I've chosen to do, right? And yourself, but it's honestly not going to be too long, I suspect. I mean, if what we're predicting here at this point with Polymarket goes to fruition and the liberals get in again, it's kind of like how Trump has reacted like a tornado in his first few months. It's like, I'm just doing this, and this. I'm not going to get another chance at this. I blew it the first time. I didn't really do all the policies I wanted. Yeah. And it's like he's coming rapid fire now. What do you think these guys are going to do? Like a miracle, another term to really make the authoritarian nature come over? Like the rules, I keep saying this. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't necessarily think that the next big event is going to be another virus where they lock everybody down, shut down the economy. I think I see enough of them promoting climate change obsession that it's going to be something like, I've used this example before, but there's solar flares now. So all the scientists agree and everybody's got to stay indoors and, go back to, let's find another way to lock down and show our power and authoritarianism. So I don't know what's going to go on in Canada the next 4 years if the Liberals win, but I can imagine it's going to be semi-fast and furious, and we'll have to see. But if I was there now, I would just be thinking there's places to put your money outside of Canada. There's obviously crypto and things like that as well. The banks down here are great from that standpoint. They're slow moving, but I think now is the opportunity to at least have that plan B, like a place to go to and a country to go to that you don't have to leave. Like if you're not a resident, then you get a tourist visa, right? And that can give you a month, 3 months, 6 months, depending on which country you're going to. But ultimately, when crap hits the fan, you're going to have to leave, right? And so, it's worth getting the residency now, having a place that you can, even if you're not going to live in it, rent it out, do whatever with it, like have a vacation home, but do something so that you can sleep at night, because I can't imagine it's going to get better before it gets worse. So.
Yeah, I guess to sum it up, the people that thought they were going to have a reprieve, maybe 4 years to kind of get their ducks in order, there's a possibility that that's going to close. Yeah. And I think you're right. Everything that they've been doing is really scary, and there's no reason that they wouldn't accelerate it. So yeah.
All right. Well, for purposes of time, we'll sum this up now and say thanks very much, Erik. Because I didn't really even introduce you in the beginning, but everybody knows Erik Veek, our CEO of our company, Autris. And let's look forward to doing another one. I think that we could deeper dive into some of this stuff as well, and let's keep our eye on things in Canada. I hope everybody in Canada that's listening to this is thinking about their plan B, and by all means, shoot us an email or call or whatever. You can, I guess the best way to do that is info@ecovillages.life. We'll tell you about a lot of the people that are doing the same thing. We get probably, 60% Canadians these days moving into our communities? Yeah. Because it's, Canada's lately, the last couple of weeks, it's been a lot of people from the UK. And then I've been invited to do a podcast in Germany, because Germans are also feeling the same problem. So, a lot of things going on. But anyway, thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you again soon.